Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Welcome back to another episode of Dubai Works Business Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by Talal Bayaa, the co-founder and CEO of Bayzat, the UAE's leading HR and payroll software that's tailored to providing a better experience to companies. They do automation and enhancing the administration process. Bayzat actually has reached over 1,000 fast-growing businesses in the UAE who have between them 60,000 employees, I should say. Welcome, Talal.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for coming. I know of Bayzat. I haven't used it personally, but can you tell me, can you elaborate on that? What is the business and what's your offering?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bayzat really focused on empowering SMEs, and everything we do is really focused on our mission, which is to make a world-class employee experience accessible to every company. And what that means for our customers is regardless of their size, regardless of their budget, on things like employee benefits, on HR automation, we can help them give their employees an amazing experience. The way we do that's really twofold. So one is we help companies automate HR administrative work, so things around health insurance, payroll management, leave management, etc., so that the people function can spend less time on admin work, more time on people. And then the second way we do that is we deliver amazing experiences directly to the employees through technology.
Okay, amazing. So it's software as a service. So traditionally companies might have HR people and departments. Are you looking, is that the department that you're looking to enable and empower?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we really deal with HR, but also sort of what we call the ultimate decision makers in the organization, which is typically a managing director, founder, CEO. Because at the end of the day, we're not only becoming a system of record for this company, but we're also becoming a system of employee engagement.
Yeah.
And obviously, employee engagement is at the top of every CEO's mind, especially these days.
How did the company come about?
We started doing something very different back in 2014, which was we were actually a consumer fintech play. The first version of that was a price comparison website. And we did that for about 2 years and then started pivoting towards this model. The first reason we decided to pivot was we weren't that excited about the strategy, some of the metrics we were seeing as a price comparison website. But then the second part was we saw the landscape for employers changing pretty rapidly in the UAE and the wider region. Our belief is all the governments of the GCC have to plan for the post-oil era. Of course, they know that. And for them, SMEs are going to be a key driver of economic growth. And you could see that through all the initiatives they're doing.
Definitely.
And that means that SMEs need to become more attractive employers, right? They need to be able to provide the benefits, the experience of, large multinationals. And once we kind of built conviction around this transformation, we decided to go, full-blown steam ahead to capitalize on it.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So we don't often hear on the podcast of pivots like that, specific kind of direct ones like that. But you hear of it a lot in other startup stories. So that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing. And then to tie it into a kind of a wider trend, what does Bayzat stand for? Mean?
Yeah, so Bayzat is a term used by Emiratis primarily to mean sort of money change. We were sort of a price comparison website in the early days.
But you've got the payroll in there, so it's still
exactly.
money.
We help you save money, of course.
Exactly. Amazing. And can you tell us a bit about you? Were you an entrepreneur? That's 7 years ago, so I assume that you didn't have a long career. You don't look that old.
Yeah.
Before that, did you jump into the entrepreneurship, and were your co-founders in that space as well?
Yeah, so to answer your question, I'm 34 years old. And originally Palestinian, born in California, but been in the GCC since 1992.
Okay.
Most of that in the UAE, so I've seen the entire transformation of the country. And I went back to university in the US, graduated in 2008, right in sort of the beginnings of the global recession. And I remember I went to the career fair at the time, and there was literally like 2 companies there. So I didn't really get the opportunity of the standard path of going to work for sort of a Fortune 500 company, which turned out for the best because I came back to Dubai. I did investment banking, private equity for 3.5, 4 years, all in very small companies, boutique firms, and then decided to start Bayzat with my co-founder, and we started working on the idea in 2013. And my co-founder also did not have startup experience. To be honest, back then startup wasn't really a thing, right? So there wasn't really a lot of VCs, angel networks, anything like that back in 2013.
And since there weren't, how did you find those initial years? Were you able to get people to believe in what you were doing? Were you able to get funding? Was it hard?
Funding is always hard. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of pitching, of course. And I would say in the early days, it was difficult, but it was also a bit less stressful because there wasn't this sort of standard of raising these huge rounds, right? And you're kind of able to scale a bit more organically and slowly and take your time trying to find product market fit, whereas today everything is sort of on an accelerated timeline. But in terms of raising an angel seed round, yeah, it was very challenging because you're reaching out to just hundreds of individuals across the globe, and most of them, that was their sort of first foray into the VC space and tech startups.
Yeah, and so did you raise money on the original concept, or and then how did you manage both all your stakeholders in the pivot and the transition?
So we raised money on the initial concept. That was actually just a small amount, around $350,000. I would say half was family and friends, half was individuals we had never met before. And we actually didn't raise any institutional capital till later, right? Because actually there was probably one VC around at the time. And when we raised that institutional capital, we were already having discussions about this opportunity we see in moving towards a B2B model in the SME space. So they were kind of already aware of that. In terms of the angel investors, look, I think most investors, especially in the early stages, when you just have a concept, assume that you will pivot, because that's 99% of companies do end up pivoting, and for the most part, they're investing in you as a team, not necessarily the concept.
Yeah, exactly. So, and how has the journey been then? I think the job market is really dynamic, or difficult and dynamic, and as you said, there's a lot of need for skills and there's a lot of need for employment. But what was it like building a SaaS product for a B2B? To get the product market fit. How did you know when you had something that worked? And then what was it like getting in front of the first customer?
Yeah, I guess when it comes to product market fit, the reality is at any point in time, you have product market fit on just a segment of your customers, right? And you're always trying to expand sort of your ideal customer profile, your addressable market. So I think it's a very sort of transient thing when you talk about product market fit. If you're investing in product engineering, you technically should never have product market fit, right? It's only on a subset of customers. And for us, I guess we were kind of trailblazers when it came to SaaS startups in the region. Till today, there's actually not that many.
Yeah.
But we're kind of seeing that wave happening now, which is very natural, right? Typically, you get sort of the consumer plays, and then you start getting the SaaS plays a bit later. And the reality is, when we looked at the market, we surveyed around 5,000 companies. What we found is that for companies between 20 to 250 employees, 75% don't use any technology when it comes to HR departments and managing their people. So they're operating on Excel, which is not an easy thing to get people to switch from. And to achieve product market fit, I would say on our first subset of customers, was probably a 12-month process, right? Because B2B is different than consumer in terms of the company is trusting you to run all their HR processes on you, and they're training every single employee in the organization to use it. So the bar they've set in terms of when they would be willing to transition is pretty high, right? You really have to exceed their manual processes. And of course, that's their habit as well. So I think, getting in front of the first few customers, we were lucky to find some that really believed in the power of having a very localized solution and a very employee-centric solution, right? So for some context, employees last month used our technology over 400,000 times, right? So we've really built something that improves the employee experience.
Wow.
And for them, they just constantly gave us feedback. You know, till today, on our product, we have a feature request board where, you know, hundreds of customers go every month, request new features, upvote on features, ask questions, things like that. So we have a very engaged customer base. Amazing.
So your full offering, so an SME company, you mentioned payroll, you mentioned leave approvals and things like that. So there's an app, like how does it work, you know, and how's the onboarding process? You mentioned that people do this on Slack. I think some are on Excel and things like that, but some companies don't even have behavior types that require software, never mind previous not purpose-built software. You know, some people might WhatsApp their boss and say, hey, I'm taking today off, and that type of thing. So what is Bayzat in terms of the full offering for an organization, and how across the company, across departments does it go? You know, does the finance department need to stop using their finance software and things like that?
Yeah, so it's really a two-step value proposition, and we always think about two stakeholders: the employer, which could be, you know, HR, line managers, finance, and then the employee. So on the employer side, you know, they can do everything from managing expense reimbursements, integrating with their biometric system. If they have shift workers, they're able to automate the entire process. And they can even, you know, enroll in health insurance plans, administer the plan, which means, you know, adding, removing employees, billing, etc., compare different offers in the market, and they can even process payroll through the platform. We're actually the only payroll solution that's integrated into the financial transaction step, right? On the employee side, they can open up the app, which is how most employees engage with Bayzat, and of course do all the HR administrative processes. But on top of that, we have things like a news feed, right, that has, you know, both user-generated content, but also automated content from Bayzat. Looks like an Instagram feed, so it creates a lot of engagement. You know, a beautiful people directory where people can, you know, can learn about their colleagues and their interests. And then we have a lot of health benefits as well, right? So it ranges from, if today as an employee, you wake up, you request a sick leave. As soon as you do that, it's linked to your health insurance plan. So you'll get a pop-up saying, hey, do you want to book a doctor in your network, which you can do through the app? Do you want to talk to a doctor right now, which again, you can do through the app, or do you just need prescriptions? And we can open up an online pharmacy for you on the app. You can get a prescription from a doctor and get it delivered to your home. So it's highly localized and really built around a unique value proposition for the end user.
Okay, so just a few quicker questions before we move into industry discussion. How many people work for Bayzat now, and what's your latest round of funding?
So our latest round of funding was the Series B round, which was, you know, just over $16 million. And currently we're approximately 170 employees, 70% in the UAE, and then we also have an office in Turkey and an office in India.
And what do the offices in Turkey and India do?
Turkey is where the majority of our engineers sit. And then India is sort of a jack of all trades, you know, any department across marketing, customer success, operations, product that needs support, especially that needs young, fresh graduates and young talent, we're able to hire pretty quickly in India.
Well done. That's a good success story from a pivot as well. So it's fascinating. It's great to see, as you said, in the B2B space. We see some software, I think we use Monday.com, which is from Israel and things like that, but we, as you mentioned, we don't have them from this region. We don't have them from the Arab world per se. Why is that? And why are we, almost same with social networks, why are we always jumping onto American software? And why does SaaS seem to have a better opportunity to travel? You know, why is Slack and all these email tools and things why is it easy for them to localize? And you know, do you think that companies like Bayzat, do you think that we'll be using more and more SaaS products from the region?
Yeah, so I think, you know, SaaS companies have received relatively less funding than sort of marketplaces, D2C companies and things like that, which again is very natural as an ecosystem is evolving. And I definitely do think we'll continue to see more and more SaaS solutions coming out of the market. And look, really, there's two types of SaaS solutions, right? Ones are like Slack, where it doesn't matter what country you're in, you can use it off the shelf. But then you have solutions that have to be highly localized, right? Which is Bayzat is one example of that. When you think about health insurance, payroll, HR administration, benefits, rewards programs for your employees that they can actually use in the country, it has a very highly localized context, right? And you see that in other SaaS companies. So there's a company in Saudi called Uniphonic, again, raised a big round, and again, very localized solution for this region. You have Foodix, which is POS for restaurants. Again, they're able to build a competitive edge by making it hyper localized. So from that perspective, I definitely think you'll continue to see more startups in the SaaS space.
Okay, that's a good lens. That's a good way of looking at it. But even for the ones that are localized, because the funding rounds are bigger in other markets, and when they decide to enter here, maybe in the payment gateway or things like that, they tend to do well. Like, do you think? What's your view on regulation? Do you think that companies in this region should maybe be incentivized or encouraged to support the SaaS products from the region? Or is there any things that, if you had a wish list, that you would go, hey, it would be great if we kind of worked with tech startups in the region more than just picking the Silicon Valley one?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic, because we've obviously spoken to a lot of the governmental organizations, and I do think that, especially when you look at sort of government-related entities and government institutions, and some of them have started doing this, is they need to rethink some of their procurement processes, because that automatically excludes a lot of the younger SaaS companies. A lot of times, the HR or whoever the champion is in that organization wants to move to a solution, but they're blocked by something as simple as the procurement requirements, right? And the tendering process. So I think from that perspective, we do hope to see some changes happening in the region.
Yeah, that's fascinating. But I think that from that point of view, even SaaS companies in the US face that challenge as well. And then, they have enterprise solutions and they work really closely. They almost lobby to get the big deals, like Slack working with Microsoft, etc., and things like that. Is that something that you need to invest in as well, to work with the not just SMEs but the semi-state and the big corporates?
We're obviously getting out in front of them and telling them our story, and many of them are quite supportive. But look, honestly, I think at the end of the day, you just need to build the best product. You need to have the best product market fit. And where we believe we have a competitive edge is GCC or Middle East and North Africa is a pretty fragmented region. It's a big population as a whole, but quite fragmented, many small markets. And if you're Oracle or SAP, sure, you may decide to take a hyper localized approach in any one of these markets, but you're stretched pretty thin, and your focus is always going to be on the biggest markets. Not to say these are small markets, we believe they're quite big, but obviously it's all relative. And from that perspective, we are able to move faster in building more localized solutions. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to bring success.
Yeah, I assume that you can, for Arabic, the platform has Arabic as well?
So we just launched in Saudi this week, and we're going live in Saudi with the Arabic version as well.
Good timing for National Day today in Saudi as well.
Exactly. So we got up our LinkedIn post today.
Great.
For the first time, congratulating Saudi on National Day. So it's pretty exciting times for us.
It's definitely. And will you have a team on the ground over there as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Again, what really resonates with SMEs and with companies is them feeling like you're homegrown. Right?
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why Cream was so successful in Saudi, right? People really viewed it as a Saudi brand in Saudi, as a UAE brand in the UAE, and that's something we have to execute on as well.
So if a company was doing an audit of software available for the HR and payroll, are there some big companies who offer this as an add-on? Some big cloud-based companies, and are there well-backed sort of unicorn-type companies in the US doing something similar?
So if someone was to do an audit, typically, again, in our customer profile, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft are out of the question, right? Just very expensive to implement, very long cycle to onboard and to continue evolving the platform. So most of them would never even consider those solutions.
Yeah.
And then they have the option to look at international sort of HR software players like Zoho, Bamboo HR, pretty low cost, but again, not very localized. The payroll doesn't integrate with the payroll processing company, doesn't help you manage your health insurance, things like that. And then you have, I think, a few startups in the region who are just doing HR software, but none of them have raised, I believe, past the seed round. So again, back to the investment aspect, they haven't received the funding. And when it comes to SaaS, you know, if you want to be in sort of hyperscale mode, the typical benchmark is 60 to 70% of your revenue should be on sales and marketing spend.
Okay, can you explain that? So your revenue that you're bringing in, you should be spending, that should be your budget.
So exactly. So if you want to get to $10 million of revenue, the reality is you probably have to spend $7 million on sales and marketing in the hyper growth mode, right? Which is I'm trying to grow 100%. It's a general benchmark for SaaS, but it does hold true. I mean, you know, you continuously see some business plans where someone's saying doubling revenue, team size stays the same, marketing spend increases by 20%.
Yeah.
But the reality, it's actually the opposite. You know, especially in the early stages, you want to double revenue, probably have to more than double marketing spend because you're not going to be highly efficient. You're not going to have a huge marketing team. So, you know, I think that's a benchmark that holds true regardless of what region you're in.
So to flip this, because I'm just trying to understand the mindset of someone selecting software for a company other than what we do here. When Bayzat is selecting software, how do you go about it? What do you use for invoicing, for different tools internally? Which department makes the decision? How do you go about it?
So for us, you know, each department involved or who would benefit from that software and use it is a central part of the decision-making process. And then typically it may affect other departments who just have to kind of check the box that, yeah, we're okay with this decision. And what we look for in any software is, one, it has to be user-friendly. It has to be very easy to implement. So we don't like to see things, you know, that require a lot of customization, engineering time from our side, with the exception of one, which was Salesforce, right? As we scaled the sales and operations, we actually hired Salesforce engineers to just really improve the platform for us and make it fit our needs. But aside from that, we really focus on the user experience.
Interesting. So, you know, on software, for example, you know, we do a lot of our, I'll just tell our example, we do a lot of our HR and admin manually because we think it's part of our culture. So we have our leave calendar, that's a locked Excel sheet that the HR team do. We have approval process on email, we have payroll goes in a certain way, and you know, so we just do things a bit manually because we think it's sort of, we're only say 30 or 40 people, and we think that that's part of the culture. You know, we use software for other things, but when we do procurement on software, for example, you mentioned Zoho books, right? So they would have come up as an option when we were replacing Sage, and we ended up with into QuickBooks. But the bigger question could have been, hey, you can, if you use Zoho books, you can also do your HR. And a lot of, you know, for example, a lot of people in the pandemic, and I'll ask about that, will have used e-signing software like DocuSign, yet Adobe, which many companies have licenses for, also have an e-sign. And so, you know, one of the kind of big problems organizations have on software in procurement and different types of licenses over the years is that they might necessarily get the most out of it. So I guess a long-winded question there, but there's a lot of overlap in SaaS. And what's the kind of best structure and best case scenario of a business? Should they have a SaaS person to manage and get the most out of software?
Yeah, look, I think especially for a company of your size, which is really in our ideal customer profile, right, is you can't afford to have 30, 40 different SaaS solutions. So there should definitely be sort of a control point or mechanism to say, we're not just going to keep buying things, because there's so many niche software solutions you can buy that do a very specific function very well. But the reality is your employees cannot, you know, efficiently use 10, 15 different softwares. And there's a lot of data out there showing, and you probably experienced it in a job before, where the company buys some sort of solution and engagement is very poor, usage is very poor. And you know, I guess the real thing we talk to customers about is the demographics have changed pretty drastically in the workforce, right? So 15 years ago, 25% of the workforce was millennials. Today, it's 50%. 5 years from now, it's going to be 75%. This is in the UAE, but also at a global level. And when you survey them, they do have different expectations, right? So for them, you know, 67% of them don't believe their employer spends on technology to enhance the employee experience, right? And it's a bit strange, right? Because you'll buy an accounting software because it's going to make the accounting team's life better and more efficient, right? But then something that every single employee in the organization would be impacted by, you kind of lose sight of that, right? And again, why? Part of it is because there hasn't been really good solutions that will engage employees. But the other part of it is companies have gone through this evolution where they started on SaaS spend for sort of mission critical things like CRMs, right? Sales marketing always has the ticket to spend on solutions. Usually decision-making process is the VP of sales. Sometimes finance is not even involved. And then after sales and marketing, typically it'd be finance, operations, and IT. And the HR gets the crumbs of the budget, right? So HR, typically within any organization, only 6% of SaaS spend is on HR department. But that's doubled in 2 years, right? And it's doubling next year again. So as more of these amazing solutions come up, we're seeing companies actually starting to adopt them.
How did you benefit? What behavior types did you see on the platform other than great growth with the pandemic? I assume that the solution that you have, which enables communication and would have been really well positioned for remote working, was that what you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of, so one is we started acquiring more customers. Obviously April, May were difficult for everyone, but post that we started seeing some growth. And you know, a lot of the objections around, I don't need a cloud-based solution. You know, we have a computer in the office where everyone just goes to update things, manual processing. Obviously those objections have disappeared completely. But then also when you looked at the usage on the platform, if you look at our user sessions chart, you know, from April 2020 till today, it's been growing 20% every single month.
Wow.
And you know, many different modules are being used. You know, for example, people wanted their employees to check in and check out, right, from the office, from the working day. So they're using our attendance mobile solution. Even though they're from home, they want to kind of give that structure to the employee. And we've continued to innovate, right, continuing to add things to help employees have a better experience. We have fitness challenges now that happen on the app. And the big change I would say from COVID is historically the employee experience has been based on the physical, being in an office together, interacting with people. Post-pandemic, the employee experience is really based off the digital. And that means there has to be a change in how you treat your employees and engage with them.
Yeah. The check-in, can you fake that? Like, you know, when people have fingerprints to go into the office or swipe card, how do you regulate it?
Yeah, so the check-in, I mean, different companies do different things. Some people just want it for tracking purposes. Some people ask, there's an option to add pictures, taking pictures while you check in and check out. But look, a lot of companies that were doing it from home, they just wanted to...
How do you verify it? How do you know that they're...
So you know, for a lot of the companies that shifted doing it from home, the point wasn't to verify it.
Sure.
The point was, we want you to have a start to your day and then end to your day, right? And these are all sort of mental models you start building up working from home, that I wake up, I check in, and then you get a push notification, day's ending, check out, right? And it's kind of having more structure in that day versus I wake up, you know, don't shower, have my coffee on the computer. Next thing I know, the sun sets and I'm going to bed.
Interesting. And sort of remote working, and you know, in different countries, like I'm sure that you use Bayzat in your company. What works really well with UAE, India, and Turkey on different time zones? Do people have a better idea of who's online, who's available, and do you have different shift work that you manage on the platform?
So the way we do it is the teams there, so in Turkey, they take their public holidays and they don't work Saturday, Sundays. They work Fridays, where we're not working, right? They start work 2-3 hours after we start in Dubai, and that works very well because everyone has focus time, right? Some of the most productive days the engineers have in Turkey are actually Fridays, right? Because everyone else is offline. So that's worked very well, as long as there's 6 hours of overlap within a day, which gives you flexibility to schedule internal meetings and collaborate. It's actually a benefit versus having everyone together for 8 hours a day. You know, obviously we've all experienced meeting overload.
Yeah, but in terms of the software, you mentioned earlier about the shift management software. I'm just trying to think for companies who have freelancers and, you know, some of the other trends of remote working or freelance recruitment tools like Upwork and Fiverr and things like that. Are you able to kind of manage everything via Bayzat for that type of
so we
employee?
don't typically have solutions that are extremely beneficial for freelancers, right? But where the shift scheduling really helps is, one is having cycles in office from home, right? Because you don't want everyone in the office at the same time. And then obviously if you're in F&B, hospitality, you know, healthcare, education sector, those are all power users of shift scheduling solutions. And we're actually the only sort of localized SaaS player that's providing that solution.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so just a question related to your current size and employees in the UAE. What role has sort of Dubai played in that? Are you happy to stay here? What free zone are you in? There's a lot of talk about, you know, some startups are moving to Abu Dhabi. People are being more present in Saudi. How crucial a role has Dubai's startup environment played for Bayzat?
Yeah, look, so we are in Dubai. We're also in Abu Dhabi in Hub 71. And, you know, we're supporting that also hub as well. And then we expect to have a strong presence in Saudi, again, supporting and benefiting from sort of the local startup community. You know, Dubai specifically has been a huge win for us being here, just because there's a very wide region around Dubai where many of these people would love to come work here because of the infrastructure, the quality of life. And obviously for us, the most important thing is the talent we're able to attract, right? And then within this region, of course, Dubai did take the lead in terms of, you know, startups reaching sort of the hyperscale, and that creates an amazing talent pool as well to hire from. So it does still have an advantage and sort of a head start on some of the other hubs. And in terms of the support, look, you know, Hub 71's been very supportive. Dubai has been extremely supportive. Look, the reality is, even back in 2013, we were still able to set up a company pretty easily for pretty low cost, because free zones is not a new thing in Dubai. And it's always been there to help it be more business friendly. And it's not unique to startups. You know, hundreds of thousands of companies are benefiting from it. And more recently, we've moved to DIFC, to sort of the new innovation hub they've set up. And yeah, I mean, I never thought I'd be running a company, you know, that has an office in DIFC. Obviously, it's some of the best office space and infrastructure in the world. And it's really kind of changed, I would say, the dynamics of the brand from both customers, right? Oh, you're in DIFC now, but also from the team, right? People love going to work there every day.
Where were you before?
So we continue to have an office in Motor City, and you know, now basically we have 2 offices, one in Motor City, one in DIFC.
Okay, so you do have lots of different bases and offices, and I think that's a kind of an example of a high growth startup, and you need software like this as well. So that's interesting. We spoke about Dubai and Saudi. What about the wider region with regards to adoption of a platform like Bayzat? You know, the Levant region is obviously, the economies aren't great there at the moment. The internet speeds, the things like that aren't great, but there's a lot of appetite for people to enter the workforce. There's a lot of enterprise. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And are there any companies in Palestine and Lebanon and Jordan using Bayzat? And then also a bigger question around the potential in North Africa and Egypt.
So, I mean, we can see from our payroll data, and obviously from, you know, serving the health insurance needs of a lot of our customers, a lot of the companies here in Dubai operate in many different countries across the Middle East and North Africa, right? So we do help them with sort of managing the payroll for different offices and things like that. And as we look at entering new markets, initially right now the focus is on being in the largest markets in the region, and that's, I think, for a SaaS company especially, but also for many companies, it's one of the challenges of operating in Middle East, North Africa, right? It's not like going from UAE to Saudi to Kuwait to Egypt is an easy process, right? They're all very different markets, different regulations, different marketing approaches. And for us, it's,
different labor laws.
Exactly. So UAE, Saudi Arabia obviously are the two heavyweights in the region, right? In almost every industry you can think of. And we want to make sure we win in these two markets. At the same time, we are experimenting in having smaller launches in some other markets, and of course, Egypt is very interesting to us as well.
Yeah. So what would a launch be? So I didn't think of it like that. If a company is based here and they have employees elsewhere, you're almost technically, your platform is working on the ground there, but you're not necessarily localizing it for that market. You don't have people on the ground. You don't have different pricing. You don't have different sort of things like that. Or I guess sort of a different way of asking this is, some SaaS products, like I alluded to earlier, can work without having people on the ground, because you build a product and it understands what in your case, what the holidays, the national holidays are in Cyprus or in Turkey or in Syria or wherever. And then when people go in, they automatically feel, oh, this knows me, right? Because it's kind of thinking of me as a country. So do you really need to, okay, in the big markets you need to be on ground, but do you really need to be on ground to get people, like you can target your marketing to those countries? Is that what you mean by entering the market?
Yeah, exactly. So there's kind of two ways. So one is just marketing, acquiring customers, but then two is building that differentiation within the product itself, right? So, we in Saudi are working on integrations with government entities, with financial service providers, to really make it easy to do everything from work permits to payroll processing, right? That requires a lot of localization.
Yeah.
But I think I can also offer you a platform that has, a better user experience than Zoho, but when it comes to payroll, it's serving the same function, which is you're just calculating the payroll, right? But then once you calculate the payroll, there's a host of other things you have to do to actually comply with labor laws, like wage protection system, things like that. So we won't go that deep in some of these other small markets versus just some marketing budget. And then, some customers, this will be enough for their needs.
Okay, brilliant. So we always ask the question of, do you think the Middle East emerging market will emerge? What's your view on that? And also to tie into, Bayzat is a case of a company who's raised significant funding at Series B level. What's the appetite amongst investors and the belief at the moment that there is a sort of a new energy and a new wave of startups in the region, and there is a lot of opportunity?
I think any investor, what they really care about, aside from the founders and the strategy, is how big is the addressable market? That's really the question for any startup. So exactly. So you need to have a big vision. Doesn't mean from day one you have a perfect plan or very detailed plan on going into every single market. But every entrepreneur needs to really think about the TAM, and it does vary quite a bit by industry, right? Some industries, maybe UAE, Saudi, are more than big enough, right? For other industries, maybe you need all of Middle East and Africa.
What's your TAM?
So look, most of our revenue comes from insurance. And from that perspective, UAE, Saudi, for us, are each over $2 billion markets in terms of our TAM. So they're quite large. And financial services obviously is sort of, a big contributor to GDP in these regions. So for us, that's exciting. Plus, we're also always adding new revenue streams for the company. And that's why we're comfortable saying, I'm not going to be in 10 countries next year. We want to be in 3-4 other markets that are as big as the UAE, and we believe that's going to make us a pretty substantial company.
And when you're speaking to investors, to that point, are you saying, hey, back us because more people are going to enter the workforce, there's going to be more indigenous homegrown companies in this region, digital transformation is taking off? Is that some of the trends and the metrics that you have to sort of put on the table and for them to buy into?
Yeah, so the way, you know, we really talk to investors is, you know, kind of what I was talking about earlier, which is the landscape of being an employer has changed pretty drastically in the region, right? So first, it's become more expensive to be an employer. Think about the mandatory health insurance laws, which tend to be the second biggest cost after payroll. It's become more complicated. Historically, GCC didn't really have very stringent labor laws, reporting requirements, but all of that has changed pretty drastically now. And what that means is you need a new kind of platform as an employer to be able to operate and thrive in this environment. So we really look at the SME ecosystem. UAE has a very strong SME ecosystem. Saudi Arabia's SME ecosystem is transforming very rapidly. It's crazy how fast it's growing, and again, purposely driven by the government's Vision 2030.
Okay, so all is positive. So moving to the end of the interview, Talal, what about future product innovations from Bayzat? We you know, the function of a HR department or occupational psychology or things like that is becoming more and more advanced. There's mental health is an openly discussed topic now, and in the region. What are the types of solutions that you're looking at that kind of can help the modern HR need?
So we did launch mental health support on the app probably 6-7 months ago. And again, you know, every employee could get 4 free mental health consultations. That was sort of our first foray into saying, let's help HR because it's on their mind.
Who provides the consultations?
So we work with third-party partners, and yeah, they'll provide the consultations. And then on top of that, we really looked at some other trends and spoke to our customers. And what we found is that actually physical health as well is something that's on their mind. And actually the number one indicator of poor mental health is poor physical health, right? So then we launched fitness challenges, and that's been extremely successful, right? We get 20% engagement from employees. So we're continuing to build on that and see how do we integrate rewards into these things. And really the goal is, you know, back to the mission of making world-class employee experience accessible to every company, is when we think about health, it's really, if an employee is sick, how do we help them get better in an affordable way? And that's where a lot of the digital health solutions have been built. But then also is how do we help them live healthier lives as well? And that's really the focus on that part.
Okay, brilliant. And finally, are there any other product innovations that you're looking at? Are there any other sort of pivots? Are there any other things that you would love to do in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, we do have a lot of other things being built. We've really sort of done a good job with the processes part, right? So now we've said we've helped HR spend less time on admin work, and now let's help them focus on more strategic work. So that's, you know, things like employee engagement, wellness, performance management is something that's on the radar because that's a very strategic part. So those are the sorts of things we're building. And then, you know, today we serve 69,000 employees in the UAE. How do we continue to delight them by, you know, helping them access services using the economies of scale we've built?
You must have a lot of data about the different types of companies they work for and the makeup of those employees as well, which is interesting. I did say last question, but I have another question. What's the future look like? You know, I'm not going to ask how much money you're raising and when you're raising and is there an exit, but you know, we've seen different types of startups mature and evolve and succeed in different ways. And we haven't seen any really startup yet list properly on one of the regional stock markets. Is that something that you ever consider? Is that a, you know, and if so, what do you think would take for that to happen? You know, on the Talal in Egypt and the Dubai financial markets, or even in Abu Dhabi, we had Philip Bahoshi from Magnet on last week, and we discussed this topic that people seem to think that they need to exit by, you know, now with a SPAC, obviously in the US, or with an acquire. But, you know, as the region advances and the financial markets advance, is that a potential outcome for you guys, or have you thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, from my investment banking days, I'm obviously familiar with sort of the markets and probably something above my pay grade here. But look, the reality is,
Well, you're CEO.
they're quite, there's not a lot of liquidity in the markets here.
Okay.
And that's obviously a huge risk for any company trying to list on there. So I think, it'll be interesting to see how the government here handles that. I know it's on the radar already. Obviously, they'd love to have more listings here, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. And I think once they solve that, then definitely why not see companies, listing here versus listing on the NYSE or NASDAQ.
Yeah, and your vision for the company, is this something that you would like to be running for a long time?
I don't lose sleep thinking about that because at the end of the day, I'm just one of many voters on the cap table who would vote for an exit. I'm happy waking up every morning, and yeah, if I'm doing this forever, I'll continue to be happy.
Okay, well, pleasure to talk to you this morning, Talal, and great to get an overview in Bayzat, and wish you continued success.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.